So, a little while ago, I did the review on this Rock Island Armory 10mm. I think that was about a year ago now. Recently, I was able to get my hands on the 9mm TAC Ultra. I'll leave those videos down below if you want to check those out. Today, though, I want to compare these two pistols and figure out which one is better, if that's even really a thing. These two high-capacity 1911s, they are so similar that aside from the obvious caliber difference, you may not notice the difference. Sure, one has a tactical rail and the other doesn't, but everything else is the same. Rock Island seems to use all the same parts. It's the same trigger, it's the same hammer, you've got the same safeties. Both guns use the same fiber optic sight system, they have the same mag releases, they feel pretty damn similar in hand. Speaking of in the hand, these Rock Island guns, they aren't something that you're going to find custom grip options for yet. I'm working with a company right now that is developing replacement grip panels for all different models of Rock Islands, including both of these high capacity 1911s, whether it's 9mm or 10mm. As soon as I have a little bit more info, I'm going to do a dedicated video to custom 1911 grips. At that point, I'll let you guys know where you can find yours and what kind of customization you can expect. I'm actually really excited about this. You know, one of the main complaints that I hear online about the Rock Island guns is that the grips are not interchangeable with your standard 1911 and that there aren't any options out there for custom. Now, because of the weird design that Rock Island gave the grips on these guns, it is going to take a little bit of time for the development process, but I assure you there will be something soon. Both the 9mm and 10mm, they seem to be built to the exact same build specifications. The build quality is really good considering that budget pricing that Rock Island gives these guns. Let's take a quick look at some shooting footage from today's range trip. The recoil with these guns is almost non-existent. There's not a lot of recoil with a 9mm to begin with, but then you go ahead and you send that 9mm round through a 5-inch barrel on a steel-framed gun, and it's just crazy how flat shooting it is. The 10mm, of course, it has a little bit more recoil than the 9, but it's nowhere near what you would expect. What's the difference in recoil between a 10mm and a 9mm? It's approximately a millimeter. Okay, so that was a really bad dad joke. Let's continue on. So every time I shoot this 10mm, I expect it to be a little bit harder to control than it really is. This is a loner, and I'm used to shooting 9mm. I shot 9mm since I turned 21 and bought my first handgun. 9 is just what I'm used to. All but one of my pistols that were lost in a tragic boating accident are 9mm. So in the back of my mind, there's this expectation that shooting 10mm is going to be really hard to handle. Like I'm really going to have to fight to keep that thing on target. The fact is, though, the heavy steel frame of the Rock Island 10mm, it absorbs so much of the recoil that going from 9mm to the 10mm, it's not a huge difference, to be perfectly honest. So these two guns, they are nearly identical other than the fact that one has a tack rail, one does not. Of course, 9mm, slightly smaller diameter barrel, 10mm, slightly larger diameter barrel. I would expect that having the tack rail on this one would give it a little bit more weight than the 10mm, but it's actually, you wouldn't notice the difference just by holding them in your hand. I don't have a scale that will go ahead and weigh these heavy sons of bitches, but I can tell you that in the hand they pretty much feel the same. So what about accuracy? I know a lot of people are shooting 9mm regularly, and they're probably thinking the same thing I am. How accurate am I going to be if I go with the 10mm Rock Island versus the 9mm? This 5-inch Rock Island is just as accurate as you would expect from a 5-inch 9mm. What really surprises me is how similar the 10mm handles. These fiber optic sights are really easy to see even on overcast days like it was today. And even though I'm just shooting steel at an outdoor site, most of my shots were on target. The ones that I did miss were pretty much grip related, and I'm going to chalk that up as it being like 28 degrees while I was out there today. The bottom line is both of these guns were way more accurate than the shooter was today. That's for sure. Now, I'm never going to hear the end of it from my uncle if I don't point this out. So, yes, the 10 millimeter is ballistically superior to the 9. There, I said it. If I'm out hiking and I encounter a bear, which actually could happen here in the Pacific Northwest, if I have my 9 millimeter on me, all I'm going to do is piss that bear off. I'm going to get mauled on the side of a mountain, and chances are nobody's ever going to find me. In that exact same situation, I'm going to be in a much better position if I'm carrying a 10 millimeter instead of a 9 millimeter. There is a really good reason why a lot of outdoor enthusiasts carry a 10 mil. 9 millimeter, I'm going to have a bad day. 10 millimeter, that bear's going to have a bad day. That being said, in a self-defense situation not involving a wild animal that outweighs me by several hundred pounds, I'm going to pick the 9 millimeter over 10 millimeter 100% of the time. That's a personal choice. That's me. That's not you. So take it for what it is. There will always be a debate over what caliber is best for self-defense, and there will never be a definitive answer as to what caliber that is. In my opinion, there's a concern with the 10 millimeter, and that concern is collateral damage, so to speak. Yes, it has ridiculous stopping power. Yes, the velocity when compared to 9 millimeter is just off the charts. That's great, except for two things. First, if you aren't used to shooting a 10 millimeter, that little bit of extra recoil, it's going to have an impact on your accuracy. In a self-defense situation, the pressure is on, your adrenaline is sky high. These little things are going to make a difference. I also feel like the 10 millimeter may be a little overpowered for self-defense. Sure, if I'm getting attacked by a bear, I am happy to have a 10 millimeter double stack on me. Happy. The average self-defense situation could turn out real bad if that 10 millimeter round blows right through your target and into an innocent bystander. Chances are that round's going to hit something solid on its way through, something like bone. It's going to mushroom out, it's going to fragment. It's not really going to be that big of a deal. But there's always a chance, and we do live in a world of lawsuits. You may save lives, but you also may find yourself on the losing end when it's all said and done with. What caliber you carry, that's all up to you. It can't be decided by anybody else. It's all about your personal comfort level. I said it before, and I'll say it 1,000 more times. Whatever it is that you carry, you just need to train often with it. For me, the choice is 9 millimeter, and I'm good with that decision. All right, enough about that. I want to talk about the negatives with these two guns. I'm not that guy who spends $1,000 on a gun and then can't bring myself to admit the faults of that gun because of my own personal financial investment. I'm honest in these reviews, whether it is my money that I've spent or, it's a product that a company has sent me. There are two major flaws with the 1911 platform that I think, if you're not familiar with the guns, you really need to keep in mind. First, the mags do require somewhat regular maintenance or tuning. A lot of the mags that you order online, they may not even work properly when you get them in. You can order 10 of them, maybe 8 of them work. The other 2 mags are going to need tuned. If you're not familiar with that or comfortable with doing it, there are a lot of companies out there that offer these kind of services. There's a good reason for that. Even if your mags function really well right now, there is a solid chance that down the road, a few hundred or 1,000 rounds later, they're going to be out of spec and need tuned. That's just something that needs done on a regular basis with 1911 or 2011 mags in order to retain that reliability. Next on the list is the feed ramp. I don't know why this is, but most of these guns that are out there, the feed ramp is going to need to be optimized for reliability. I don't know why the manufacturers can't just, figure this out during development and manufacturing and actually design and produce a feed ramp on a barrel that functions like it's supposed to. But that's just how it is with 1911s. Not every company, not every barrel is like this, but it is a high probability that if you purchase a 1911 or 2011, it may need to have a little work done to it before it's as reliable as you would expect. You can send these Rock Island guns into places like Hayes Customs where they will work them over and do all kinds of stuff to increase that reliability. That includes fixing the angle of the feed ramp and polishing it out. Why is that important? I'm glad you asked. So this isn't entirely unheard of in the world of 1911s. A lot of guns, regardless of the company, can be very picky when it comes to what kind of ammo they will and won't feed. Now there is a lot that goes into that, but essentially what the majority of it boils down to is the shape of the projectile and the angle of the feed ramp. That's why there are companies like Hayes Customs that go ahead and address these issues and increase reliability. You know, if you think about it, it's kind of like owning a classic car. It's definitely going to leak a little bit here and there. From time to time, the carburetor is going to need just a little bit of adjustment. But when it's running, oh man, is it ready to race. Now, I personally don't have a shit ton of experience with 10 millimeters. This one, like I said, is a loaner. It does not belong to me. I'm a 9mm guy. Say it once, say it 1,000 times. That's my round of choice. I've read plenty online. I've seen a lot of videos, and I've talked to a lot of people who say that 10mm can be especially picky when it comes to the type of ammo that it will and won't feed. Now, that's not a Rock Island thing. Apparently, this is something that happens with a lot of guns that shoot 10mm. So that's not necessarily indicative of Rock Island. That's something that you just need to address if you plan on shooting 10mm. So when I factor in all the little bits and pieces and I make that judgment call about 9mm Rock Island versus 10mm Rock Island, I'm going to have to say 9mm wins. If we're talking about right out of the box, brand new, hasn't been worked on, hasn't been tuned up, just, you know, you pick it up from the gun store and you load it up and you start shooting it. Unfortunately, the 9mm seems quite a bit more reliable, and in the world of firearms, reliability wins every time. Sure, I'm screwed if a bear comes out of the woods and I'm carrying my 9mm. But isn't that the same result if I'm carrying the 10mm and it doesn't want to feed reliably? Basically, I'm in the same boat either way. Now, just as a side note, if you are interested in having one of these Rock Islands worked over by a reputable company, if that's something you're really interested in, you're really only talking about a few $100s. What that means is that the cost of the gun and having a little bit of work done to it still puts you at a considerably lower investment cost than a lot of the other brands that are out there. So as far as Rock Island Armory goes, I like their guns. They are extremely well built, even if they do have their little quirks. I like their pricing, even if they are hard as hell to get a hold of right now. I do wish that the guns came with more mags. I think both of these guns, the 9mm and the 10mm, only came with one magazine, and availability for spare mags isn't quite what I'd like it to be. But let's face it, in this day and age, right now, anything firearm related is hard to come by. That being said, I don't think you can really go wrong with the Rock Island, regardless of what caliber you go with. These guns are a great value, and you're getting way more than what you're actually paying for when you invest your money into a Rock Island Armory pistol.